I'm going to go ahead and open up in prayer. So, Father, we just thank you for this morning. We thank you for your word. Lord, we ask that you would give us deeper revelation, deeper understanding. Father, I ask that we'd find areas that we can just relate to, that we can see and walk out, step out, and actually have a hope and confidence where our failures may have been, that there's always redemption and there's goodness in your word. And so we give this morning to you in Yeshua's name. Amen.
Amen.
So our Torah portion actually starts at Genesis 44:18. But that being said, we did not meet last week, and this Torah portion drops us right smack in the middle of the story. So I kind of want to back up a little bit. I realized last year I taught last week's portion. Because it was
fun.
Dreams.
Uh-huh.
So, and I'm not going to teach on dreams, which is like, right?
Shocked.
I know, I'm shocked. But the dreams were important in this. And we do see the fulfillment of his dreams in this portion, both last week's and this week's. But I want to focus a little bit more on the family dynamics. I want to focus in on Judah. I want to focus in on Simeon. I want to focus in on Reuben, Jacob, Joseph. I don't, even though we call this the Joseph story, I see a lot more of it being the brothers' story. I see it even being Jacob's story in this whole thing, even though we get to see what poor Joseph went through to go from captivity into delivering the world through this. A lot of this has to do with family dynamics and redemption within the family. So I kind of want to look at it from that perspective a little bit. But let's rehash what last week's portion was so we can get up to where we're at right now. So in Genesis 42, and I'll start in there, Joseph meets up with his brothers. The famine hits. Jacob has to send his sons down to get grain, right? Except for Benjamin. But he sends all the sons to Egypt to buy grain. And right off the bat, well, in verse 7 of 42, we get to see Joseph's brothers come before Joseph. It says, then Joseph's brothers came and bowed down with their faces to the ground. When Joseph saw his brothers, he recognized them, but he made himself unrecognizable to them. Then he spoke harshly and said to them, where have you come from? They said, the land of Canaan, to buy grain for food. So we see, Stanley.
How many years had passed between this point and when they threw him in the pit?
Approximately 22 years, I believe. This has been
That's
about
a fair amount of
22
time,
years
then.
of
Okay.
not seeing him.
All right.
So he recognizes them, but we also have to remember that when he recognizes them, but they don't recognize him. And his appearance had already changed. Like when he went before Pharaoh to interpret the dreams, it says like they cut his hair, they made him look more Egyptian, probably to present him more favorable before Pharaoh. So his identity had already been slightly shifted, his appearance had already been slightly shifted, but by this point, he wants to make sure his brothers don't recognize him. Stan.
I think also what helped that is he was the authority figure in the room, and it is very unlikely that they would have stared him in the face for very long.
Mm-hmm. Well, and he was dressed, at this point in time, he's dressed in the finest apparel. And of course, they bowed down to him. So what do we see fulfilled right there?
Dream.
The dreams. So this is the first bowing down. Jonathan?
I was going to answer his question about the time. Well, when Joseph was taken to Egypt, he was 17.
Mm-hmm.
When Joseph is presented to Pharaoh, he was 30. And we're about to see there's 2 years be the brothers.
Mhm.
So it kind of gives you a little time frame there.
Yeah, I think the time gap, when I'm thinking around 22 years, it's the time from when he last saw his dad, when this all accumulates to the end. I think I read that it was 22 years since he had seen his father.
Okay.
And so we've got this, yeah, you know, because some of the translations will tell you like they ran out of grain. Some will say a year later he sent them back. Some don't even tell you how much longer. They just got sent back after they ran out of grain. So yeah, doing the math is interesting on that, and I'm getting a little bit of variance, but I think the time from when Joseph saw his father last till the time they reunite, that was the 22-year period of time. So we have the brothers bowing down, which fulfills Joseph's first dream. And then we have Joseph questioning his brothers. So in verse 8, it says, though Joseph recognized his brothers, they did not recognize him. Then Joseph remembered the dreams he had dreamed about them. Then he said to them, you're spies. You've come to see the undefended places in the land. No, my lord, they said to him, your servants come to buy grain as food. All of us, we are sons of one man. We're honest. Okay, so we're honest, right? Your servants have never been spies. Not so, he said to them. Rather, you've come to see the undefended places of the land. But they said, we, your servants, are 12 brothers, sons of one man in the land of Canaan. Look, the youngest is with our father today, and the other one is no more. Joseph said to them, it's just like I told you when I said you're spies. By this, you'll be tested. By the life of Pharaoh, you'll not leave here until your youngest brother comes here. Send one from among yourselves to get your brother while you remain confined in order to test your words and see whether the truth is in you. If not, by the life of Pharaoh, you're definitely spies. So he put them together in custody for 3 days. Then Joseph said to them on the third day, do this and you will live. I fear God. If you're honest, let one of your brothers remain as a prisoner in the guardhouse where you've been, while you go and bring grain for the hunger in your homes. And your youngest brother bring to me, so that your words can be verified and you won't die. So they did. So it shows here, like first, like this anger thing, and I'm sure part of it being triggered by we're honest, and he's like, you know, dude, right? So first it's like, I'm going to throw all of you in jail. I'm only going to let one of you go pick up your brother. But after 3 days, he obviously calmed down. Now we're switched to, okay, I'll let all of you go, but one of you has to stay here. And now we kind of get the setup of who was picked to do this. Then each man said to his brother, we're truly guilty for our brother. We saw the distress of his soul when he begged us for mercy, but we didn't listen. That's why this distress has come to us. So with this one line, it's like 3 days of being jailed, and we see Joseph was down in the pit, right? So all of a sudden they're kind of going, okay, this imprisonment thing here, they're relating to this. And the fact that they were able to relate that all these years later, them being put into jail gets translated back to what they did to their brother. And of course, they've had 3 days to process this. So I'm sitting there thinking, you know, they're probably going, why did this happen? Why me? You know, why? And then all of a sudden they're like having these aha moments, like, we're in distress. We saw our brother in distress. Oh, I bet this is the Lord's punishment. And so they're kind of starting to connect the dots here on that, which to me is remarkable. I mean, after all those years, they could have just not even really related one to the other, but they did. And that's really important because we're seeing this cycle where they understand there's consequences to their actions, right? And then they said, but then we have Reuben. Reuben answered them and said, "Didn't I tell you, don't sin against the boy? But you didn't listen. Now see how his blood now is being accounted for." They did not know that Joseph was listening, since there was an interpreter between them. He turned away from them and wept. And when he turned back to them and spoke to them, he took Simeon from them and tied him up before their eyes. Then Joseph gave the order to have their bags filled with grain and return the money and send them back. Why Simeon? Why do you think it was Simeon?
So he was the one with the idea, right, to kill him?
Actually, Judah's accounted for a lot of that.
Judah?
Judah was,
Okay.
for the initial,
I thought Judah was the ones like, why don't we sell him instead of killing him?
yes, but he's still, from reading different commentaries, because I kept thinking, why did he pick Simeon, right? Why Simeon?
Well, I think way back when, Simeon and Levi were the ones that
Mhm.
killed all those people that violated, that,
Mhm.
their sister.
Mhm.
And, it might be that the Lord was the one that put this on their conscience and brought it up, because God's present everywhere, and he wanted us to have that story to read, to realize there's accountability, and so it may have gone back,
Could be.
further.
They also, from some of the commentaries I read, generally, he probably would have held the firstborn, Reuben, the oldest. But he heard what Reuben said, and he actually wept over that. Like, he didn't know, like, who was for him or who was against him. And I think Reuben was spared from that because he heard Reuben say, "Didn't I tell you don't do this to the kid?" So who's the next one in the birth order? Simeon.
Simeon.
So Simeon is now going to stand in the gap for this and be tied up, right, and kept there. So now we're going to fast forward. We get now to heading home and greeting Dad. Poor Dad. Verse 29. And when they came to their father Jacob in the land of Canaan, they told him all that had happened to them. The man, the Lord of the house, spoke with us harshly and took us as spies. But we said to him, "We're honest. We've never been spies. We're 12 brothers, sons of our father. One is no more, and the youngest in our fathers is with our father today in the land of Canaan." Then the man, the Lord of the house, said to us, "By this I will know if you're honest. Leave one of your brothers with me. As for the hunger of your homes, take and go. Then bring your youngest brother to me so that I may know that you're not spies, but you're honest, and I'll give you back your brother, and you can move about freely in the land." Now when they were emptying their sacks, behold, there in each man's bundle was his money back in his sack. When they saw their money bundles, they and their father, they were afraid. And their father Jacob said to them, "You have made me childless." Now this is an interesting, his response to this, his dialogue on this to me is really interesting. "You have made me childless. Joseph is no more. Now Simeon's gone, and next you'll take Benjamin. Everything is against me." So when the brothers were in prison, they see this as a punishment on them for what they did to Joseph, right? But all of a sudden we see Jacob going, "No, this is against me," and he sees this as something that's being done against him. And of course, he's distraught. Dad just lost another kid. And it sounds to me that he's kind of writing him off as gone, right? Like, he's gone. And now we're going to talk about Reuben again. Then Reuben spoke to his father, saying, "You can put my 2 sons to death if I don't bring them back to you. Put him in my hand, and I'll return him to you." Okay. Reuben's offer. What are your thoughts? first of all, what's going through Reuben's mind on this?
Let's make a deal.
Yeah? Yeah?
Well, and Reuben had, you know, that relationship with the concubines, and that annoyed, that really set Jacob up. So one possibility is he's trying to get back into good graces with his father and redeem himself.
Which he really never does.
Well, no, but
Yeah,
I mean,
but
his
yeah.
effort to do
Yeah.
it. And
But as a grandmother or grandfather, or what grandparent would want their grandchildren put to death? I mean, Reuben doesn't say, I'll die for it. He says, we'll kill my 2 sons if I don't do this for you. And when I sat and thought about this also, because it's just like such a ridiculous proposal, because God is all about life, right? Killing off 2 kids. The Lord's never asking this. And maybe Reuben did think it made him noble to say, well, you can kill my kids if I don't bring them back. But we're looking at here like Jacob has already lost in his mind 2 kids. The grief that he's gone through in losing kids, obviously Reuben has no concept of what that's like. And he obviously must be pretty confident that he'd be able to bring them back because, again, who offers their kid's life? It's good to see you. So, so I'm kind of thinking, it's kind of like Dad's not even like, you know, my son's not going down with you. His brother's dead and he alone remains. And if harm should happen to him along the way that you're going, you'll bring my gray hair down to Sheol in grief. There's the Sheol in there. Yeah. So we see the connectivity, like he's basically saying my life is bound. And we see this several times in the story. My life is tied and bound to this kid. If Benjamin dies, I die, is kind of almost how Jacob's like, my heart can't take this. I can't lose him. Now we do see the favoritism again, right? But we also kind of see this parallel of this favored. So many times he almost words it like, this is my one only begotten son type of wording in this. Like we see Jacob looking at this kid like, this is of the 2 concubines and Leah, Rachel's the only one that I think ever really he expresses this deep, deep love for. And he has these 2 boys by the woman he really loves. And he doesn't want to lose this one last child and the baby of who he really loves. And so this proposal of Reuben of, I'll put my kids to death, and he's like, no, not having that. Plus, he doesn't trust him. I mean, there's already, I don't know if he really trusts any of his sons at this point in time, because he's had so many different weird conflicts of what Simeon and Levi did, what Reuben's done. Judah's life's kind of been a little bit of a mess off and on, because Emma discussed the Tamar situation, which actually plays into this storyline now. We see a lot of parallels for what Judah went through, and we're going to see some similarities of where we see Judah maturing because of the Tamar situation. So let's keep going so we can actually get to our portion. So now we're in chapter 43, and they run out of grain. So Jacob tells him to go back for more, and now Judah steps up this time. And here's my question. Why do you think Judah was the best choice to negotiate with his dad at this point?
Kind of hoping you tell me.
Okay. Well, here's my thought on this. Judah has also lost 2 sons. So I
And
think-
tried withholding his third.
Yes. So, yes, he's lost the two sons so he can relate to the loss. And then he also tried to protect the youngest son from being killed. And, you know, ultimately that took care of itself. But we do see Judah being able to relate to his dad. Like, I know you've lost the two. You don't want to lose this one. I understand. I mean, I understand what you're going through here. I really feel like that's why he was the best choice. I've lost two kids. I wanted to protect. I understand. And so he comes and presents this main question to his dad. And the whole dialogue basically comes down to this. Do you sacrifice the life of all your family members to protect the one? And so that's kind of his reasoning finally when it gets down to dad. Do we all die so that you can keep Benjamin? Like, we're all gonna die if you don't do this. And I feel like he probably was, again, heart relating to, I understand you love this kid. I really love my youngest son, but we're all gonna die if you don't do this, Dad. And we see, what I love the parallel is, like, when I was looking at this, I thought, so if Jacob, if you give up the one son for the sake of everybody else's life, what does that make you think of?
Sorry.
Jesus.
Yeah, Yeshua. The sake of the one, the Father giving the life of the one to spare the life of the rest, to save the life of the rest. And when I looked at this, I thought, you know, we had the testing of Abraham. Are you willing to kill your beloved son? Are you willing to be obedient to this? So we're kind of seeing this, like, and now Jacob, are you willing to give up the one you really love to save this family and to carry on the storyline, right? I mean, like, if they all die of famine, our story ends. And then I guess the Lord has to find somebody and start all over again, because he's going to make that happen. But so much is invested in this. And so now we've got this, are you willing to sacrifice the life of your son for the one? So Jacob's being asked to give up the son for the sake of the rest. And again, for God so loved the world, he gave his only son. He's being asked this. So when we get to Genesis 43:15, the brothers return with Benjamin now. And Benjamin, of course, is highly favored by Joseph in front of his brothers, and we see this whole giving him extra portions. Let's provoke the brothers to jealousy, just the same way Dad gave me my special coat. I'm going to shed favor on Benjamin. How will my brothers react? I really feel like that's the test. Have these guys grown up? Truly, has there been a heart change? Or do we still have this jealousy thing going on? Because it's obvious when they told him, Dad won't let us bring Benjamin. You know Joseph's sitting there thinking, okay, yep, you know, I can relate to that. You guys had to work in the field, you know, and I was, so you kind of see this, I'm sure he's sitting there thinking, okay, Dad's favoring this guy. If I should give him gifts, let's see how the brothers will react. So, again, he's being tested, and I truly believe at this point in time, I think Joseph's still mad, and he's still testing, right? He knows, you know, we see later in this, he does know that God placed him there, but that doesn't change the betrayal, the aspects of working out trauma of what his brothers did. And honestly, you know, if somebody walked back into your life all those years later, are you going to trust them when they did something like that? And so this testing continues on. So we see that this cup is placed in Benjamin's sack, and so the test begins. So now we're in 44, almost there. And now we've got this little dynamic going on, and I love this, where the same guy that Joseph kind of dealt with of put the money back in my brother's sacks the first time around. Now he goes, okay, take this cup and put it in Benjamin's sack. And so they left the city. They didn't get far when Joseph said to one of his household, get up, go after. When you catch up to them, say to them, why have you repaid evil for good? Isn't this the one from which my Lord drinks? He even uses it especially to discern by divination what you've done is evil. So I caught up to them and spoke these words to them. Okay, so how many people have a problem with the fact that they're saying that Joseph deals in divination?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. It was not unusual, like the pharaohs, the priests, divination was basically a very standard practice. So since they thought he was an Egyptian, it's not, and he is a teller of dreams and all of this, to put that label on him. And we have to remember, we don't have the commandments yet that you're not supposed to dabble in that. But to put that label on him was not what we would think of, I think, now. I think it was just to bring further fear in the brothers that, this guy deals in divination.
Well, and Joseph was given the lady that was a daughter of one of their priests.
Yeah.
Type thing, so it would be within his, later on, we'll find out, he says, say this to Pharaoh so you don't look, offensive to them. And so he's learned how to use the right, proper terms and the things like that to accomplish. Well, and I think the Lord is in this too.
Oh, yeah, yeah. So we've got this dynamic going on, and then he spoke these words to him, they said to him, why does my Lord say such things? Far be it from your servants to do such a thing as this. Look, the money we found in the opening of bags we brought back to you. Like they're trying to say, we're good guys, we wouldn't do this, right? So how could we steal silver or gold from your Lord's house? Whoever among your servants is found with it, let him die. And we also with the Lord will be the Lord's slaves. So this is how confident, like put him to death, right? Where else did we see that happen? That there was a stealing of property.
Rachel.
Yeah. Rachel taking Laban's idols, and then Jacob being stupid, says whoever stole, she'll die also. And she does die in childbirth.
She does die.
Giving birth to Benjamin, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And because they weren't asking, like, we're offering, like, whoever did it will die, right? They didn't say whoever's going to do this. Joseph isn't asking for that. They're so confident that once again, the same way Jacob says, my wife will die, or whoever it gets caught with this will die. And again, here's the parallel. They took the idols. They're claiming this cup is a cup of divination. So again, we've got something that is being used in a form of idol worship or ritual worship that supposedly has been stolen. And so we kind of see, I love the threads to see like, okay, it happened here, now it's happening again, and I think we're supposed to be drawn to the similarities on, okay, this is happening again, and once again, we're offering somebody's life for something. And I mean, fortunately, we don't see that Benjamin died, but Benjamin didn't steal it. This was again a test. If Benjamin had stolen that, and they had pledged his life the same way Jacob had pledged Rachel's life when she stole it, we could be looking at a different scenario here. But there was no theft that happened here. So I just kind of wanted to look at that little bit of similarity there. And so now we find this has been placed in Benjamin's sack. Each man lowers his sack. They search it from the beginning with the eldest. So here the suspense. Thank you. Builds. We're going to start with the oldest and we're going to work our way down, right? 1 second, they're like, every one of them's like, right? And then they get to the youngest and then dun, 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 here it is, right? So it's all built up to this. And it was found in Benjamin's sack. Then they tore their clothing, and each one loaded up his donkey, and they returned back to the city. When Judah and his brothers entered Joseph's house, he was still there, and they fell on the ground before him. "What's this deed you've done?" Joseph said to them. "Didn't you know that a man like me can discern by divination?" Then Judah said, "How can we say to my Lord? What can we speak? How can we justify ourselves? God has exposed your servant's guilt. We are now in my Lord's slaves, both we as well as the one in whom the hand the cup was found." But he said, "Far be it from me to do this. The one in whose hand the cup was found, he will be my slave. But you, go up to your father in peace." Go up to your father in peace, like as if that's going to happen, right? So now we're in our portion. Duh. So now Judah approached him and said, "I beg your pardon, my lord. Please let your servant say a word in my lord's ear, and don't be angry with your servant, since you are like Pharaoh." My lord asked his servant, saying, "Do you have a father or a brother?" So we said to my lord, "We have a father who is old, and a child born to him of his old age, and he's young. Now his brother is dead, so he's the only one of his mother's children left, and his father loves him." And that his father loves him is that same love that when we see that very first where it says that Abraham loved his son Isaac. We see that type of love. And the boys are really familiar with this. And so it says, "Then we said to their servants, 'Bring him down to me so I can look at him.' But we said to my lord, 'The boy cannot leave his father. If he were to leave his father, he would die. Then you said to your servants, unless your youngest brother comes down with you, you won't see my face again.'" So again, we see this attachment. Like, if he leaves his father, he will die, right? And that connectivity there. "Now they went up to your servant, my father, and we told him the Lord's words. Then our father said, 'Go back, buy us a little grain for food.' So we said, 'We won't go down unless we have our youngest brother with us. Then we'll go down, for we won't see the man's face unless our youngest brother's with us. Then your servant, my father,'" and he keeps calling him, "your servant, my father." Like trying to like connect this, like please relate to him. He's your servant, you know. "You yourselves know," and this is what Jacob said to him, "You yourselves know that my wife bore me 2 sons. One went out from me, so I said he must have been torn to shreds, and I haven't seen him since. And if you also take this one away from before me, and an accident happens to him, you'll bring my gray hair down to evil of Sheol." So at this point in time, up until this time, we still don't know, and Joseph hasn't been told what his dad thought happened to him. And you always kind of wondered, like even as a kid, and I think we've brought this up before, like, didn't he ever wonder, like, why didn't Dad come look for me? Why didn't anybody come to see? He didn't know. Like, he didn't know the story that was given. He didn't know if Dad ever knew. And now he's finding out that Dad really didn't know and just assumed maybe he's been torn to shreds. But I was also thinking about, like, you hear these stories about people's kids that go missing. And how so many times, even if their child's dead, they just want closure. They just want to know what happened. So here we have Jacob really not knowing. And if he's assuming they've been torn to shreds, it also makes you believe that he's not really sure if the story his sons told him are true either. I mean, there is a fracture because of that Joseph incident. It seems like there is a fracture that has happened in that family that is still cycling to this time. A distrust, a deception, just a who can I trust type of thing going on here. And so now it says, now if I come to your servant, my father, and the boy isn't with us, since his life is bound to his life, when we see that boy is no more, he'll die. Then your servants will bring the gray hair of your servant, our father, down to Sheol in grief. For your servant became a pledge for the boy with my father, saying, if I don't bring him back to you, I will bear the blame before your father all my days. So now, please let your servant remain as my Lord's slave in the boy's place, and let the boy go up with his brothers. For how can I go up to my father, and the boy is not with me? Else I must see the evil that would come upon my father. So I'm going to stop right there. Let's talk about Judah. So we see here, Judah just retold the story to Joseph. And he's letting him know, my father's old. And I like this point. It says, my father's old, and a child was born to him of old age. Again, who does that sound like?
Abraham.
Mm-hmm. The Abraham and Isaac. We've once again got an old man having a baby in his old age and loving that child, right? And then Judah, of course, had offered himself for his brothers, which again makes you think so much of Yeshua offering himself for the world. But when Judah did this pledge, and it's kind of like what I like about this is it's like, okay, Joseph now will reveal himself at the very beginning of chapter 45. And we see Judah reliving an incident that had just happened. We don't know how long ago, but it says this has happened. This has happened to Judah before. Tamar had hid her identity. Joseph has hid his identity. So both times we got Judah being forced to do the right thing by a hidden identity here. And Judah gave a pledge to Tamar, like, here's my staff and my signet, he gives a pledge to her. But now we see this maturity where Judah's pledge is his own life on behalf of this boy. So he pledges stuff for sex with Tamar. He pledges his life to his dad to save a son. Like this level of maturity that has now come out of Judah makes him trustworthy in all of this. And I love it because one of the things I put is both times we see that Judah was confronted and changed by righteous deceivers. Because honestly, they deceived him, right? And even when Judah calls Tamar righteous, and we're thinking, but she acted the prostitute, she disguised, what is it? No, she was making him do the right thing, and he called her righteous. Here we have Joseph playing this game and testing him, deceiving him, but he's righteous in the midst of doing this because he's getting the family, he's getting Judah to do the right thing. Does anybody have any comments on that?
That's, God does. No.
Yeah, you can't emphasize testing throughout all biblical, everything biblical,
Mhm.
that God does test.
Mhm.
And yes, Joseph, like you pointed out, had to go through probably some emotional healing through all this. But the whole purpose was to test them, to see if they had repented, if their hearts had changed. And so this whole back and forth is, testing, to see if they will do the right thing. And so I don't think you can, I mean, all scripture, is about testing, and that we can take comfort in that we are being tested also.
Mhm.
Who benefits from being tested?
The one that's the
testee or the person taking the test?
person taking the test. And you get to see their growth, you get to see
They see their own growth.
they see their own growth in
Yeah.
it. Have you learned your lesson? Like sometimes it's like, how many times do you gotta go round and around before you learn your lesson? We see a lot of growth that happened in Judah. Another dynamic that I see in this story is, it has to do with because of what Judah did, we're starting to see a birth order thing going on here. Like, who exhibits the best traits to be really classified as the one that should receive the blessing. Now I want to read a little thing also from the Torah story that I really liked about this. It said, why did Judah get the blessing? Because we do see, going further, and I'm not going to jump into the next portion because I want to let Miguel, I think it is, gets to run with that one. But Judah gets the blessing, right? It says, Judah offered himself. This event resolves the 2-decade-plus family fracture that resulted from the crime against Joseph and the lie to Jacob. The immediate effects were to break Joseph's control over himself, because we do know now he just breaks down, right? Before he was so it breaks Joseph's control over himself and end his deception and manipulation over his brothers. What he's doing right now, he stops doing it when this offer is made. Because of Judah, the family tree has been divided, because many commentators blame this initial situation on Judah. They see him being the spearhead of what happened to Joseph. Because of the change in Judah's self-sacrifice, the family's now been reunited. Jacob would again see the son of his beloved Rachel. Judah's act ended this particular cycle of deception, and now he would get the blessing, because he's the one that stepped up, right? Like, so he's the one, and we see that foreshadow of the one who's willing to offer himself for the sake of others, just like Yeshua.
That gives us hope.
Yeah.
You know, when we've messed up or what,
Mhm.
or even our family members, that things can turn around and we can be used.
Mhm. True.
Even if we've gone the wrong path before. And I was thinking as far as testing, we're tested by the Lord, but in the practice of testing, or I don't know if it's called practice, but the testing phenomena involves deception a little bit, because we're either deceived, and so we're tested to begin to see the light, or not.
Mhm.
It's our choice, but you see what I'm saying? I mean, there is deception in the midst of that,
Mhm.
because we're either deceived and we need to see the light, and the Lord is helping us by testing us to get us there, and so obviously they're using deception there, but
Mhm.
yeah, it's interesting.
Faith?
Let me see if I can put this together. Well, it's the glory of God to conceal a matter,
Mhm.
and as far as being righteous to conceal identity, right now, God is allowing his true identity to be concealed from certain people. Because I don't know that I would come against Joseph, because in a way Joseph, I mean, he is a type and shadow of Yeshua. And he is, it's being orchestrated to the place that he's going to reveal his mercy. To where they are, rightly so, judgment could come, but instead of judgment, they're going to be shown mercy. So, and the other thing I would say about testing, I had a friend that said one time the teacher is often silent during the test. And I do think that it seems like our experience that when we are being tested, it's like God is feeling the most distant to us. And just to pray that we will pass these tests, even if we don't know that we're being tested. I don't know if that.
Yeah, it does.
kind of applies.
And like what you're saying, I mean, both Joseph and Judah, they're both saviors in this story, right? Because we've got Joseph, like Yeshua, Joseph saving the world from starvation. Not just his family, and Yeshua didn't come just for his family. He came to his family, but it was for the sake of the world. And so Joseph, his position is to save the entire world from starvation. Judah is basically saving his family from themselves. Right? He's keeping this story, his salvation message in this is, I'm going to save my family from the self-destructive mode that we're in.
Is he somewhat a type of a messianic Jewish? I read that somewhere where he's like the remnant of Israel that is saved to save his family.
Well, yeah, and I mean, from Judah is where we get the Jewish people. Like, their identity becomes part of him. This is like, he is the, with the Messianic, we have the Lion of the tribe of Judah. So this offering that he does sets up the whole dynamic for what follows on to be the head. And so basically he assumes the firstborn's blessings in this. Joseph gets the double portion blessing. Like I said, I'm trying really hard not to go into next week's portion. They both get blessings out of this because they're both saviors in this storyline.
I didn't see way back when Joseph was in the pit, Judah came and says, in essence, don't kill him. He sort of gave a chance when we've gone against the brothers. Well, let's sell him to that. At least he's not. We haven't killed him, you know. Yeah. So I mean, there was a seed that was in Judah some time ago.
Yeah, but I think all selfishness was broken out of him by the time this. He had lost 2 sons, he had tried to save, I mean, we see by this point in time a really transformed individual from what the beginning to where he's at now, which I think is beautiful. And so we'll keep going. Now, Joseph reveals himself to his brothers, and it says in here, the weeping is so loud that he's doing that it says the Egyptians and even Pharaoh's house can hear this. Like this, and then he asks again, because it seems like now he's finally starting to believe that maybe his brothers aren't lying to him, because once again he asks, is my father alive? Which makes you think that every time they've been saying this to him, maybe he doesn't believe it. Because obviously he still has some doubt in his brothers. And then we're going to get to this really cool portion in Genesis 45, verses 4 through 7. Then Joseph said to his brothers, "Please come near to me." So they came near. "I'm Joseph, your brother, the one you sold to Egypt," he said. "So now don't be grieved and don't be angry in your own eyes that you sold me here, since it was for the preserving of life that God sent me here before you. For there has been 2 years of famine in the land, and there'll be 5 more years yet with no plowing or harvest. But God sent me ahead of you to ensure a remnant in the land and to keep you alive for a great escape. So now it wasn't you didn't send me here, but God." So now Joseph, it's like he's weeping, he's revealing himself, and he gets it. And he wants to make sure they get it. This was God. This was God that did this. God did this so I could save you. God did this so I could save the world. But one of the little things that I like in this is, he said he was here to preserve life, and this was God's plan. But then he said to keep you alive for a great escape. I love that verbiage, because now this great escape isn't going to happen for a long time. But so even though they've come down there, there's going to be a great escape. And I don't think it was just to escape the famine. I think there was something much greater he was saying in this great escape. And this great escape here starts the time clock that was referenced all the way back in Genesis 15, 13 through 14, which was, "Now he said to Abraham, 'Know for certain that your seed will be strangers in a land that's not theirs, and they'll be enslaved and oppressed 400 years. But I'm going to judge that nation that they will serve. Afterwards, they'll go out with many possessions.'" So we see this starting now, this time clock. It's like, here we go. Get ready for the great escape. Way down the road, but get ready for it. And I feel like now things are getting set up. Did you want to say something?
Oh, you
Oh,
read
I saw you do-
You
I
read
got
my
you.
mind.
I read you. Oh, no.
I'm just thinking about the Haftorah for this
Yeah.
week,
Mhm.
Ezekiel,
Mhm.
and the unification of Joseph and Judah, because that's where Ezekiel is talking about the 2 sticks
Mhm.
being combined again and relating. One represents Israel, Joseph, and the other represents Judah, and they're being unified again. And, it's this whole cycle throughout biblical narrative, and since the biblical narrative ended,
Mhm.
these cycles of disobedience and the results of that, the being cast out of the land and then being brought back to the land. And I've read recently that the most repeated prophecy in all Scripture is that the Jewish people be restored back to the land of Israel.
Yeah.
And a little tidbit there I noticed when Joseph told the brothers to go back to their father, he said, "Go back up to your father." And I don't know if that's just a phrase of respect when you talk about a child going to their father, that you go up to them. But it caught my attention because
You always go up to
you
Israel.
always go up to the land of Israel.
Mhm.
You always go up to Jerusalem.
Mhm.
When you leave Jerusalem, you're always going down.
Mhm.
And so Jerusalem is the center of the spiritual universe.
Mhm.
And so you go up to your father Israel, who's the center of God's purpose, in order to be a light to the nations.
Yeah.
Like you said, in order to save the universe, to save the world. But they are chosen to be that light,
Mhm.
and the word of the Lord from Zion comes from Jerusalem. And so,
Yeah.
this cycle of sin and repentance and restoration and then ultimately the final redemption.
Stan?
You said something a few minutes ago. Before I disagree with you, I want to make sure I didn't misunderstand you.
Okay.
Um,
I love you.
Fair.
What did you say about this was God? What was God's involvement
Oh,
in this?
what Joseph said was, his revelation on it was, he told his brothers, don't be grieved and don't be angry in your own eyes that you sold me, since it was for preserving life that God sent me here before you. For there have been 2 years of famine, and there'll be 5 more, and it says, but God sent me ahead of you to ensure a remnant in the land and to keep you alive for the great escape. So now it wasn't you didn't send me here, but God. So Joseph sees this as being the setup from God. And even with, when you even kind of, try not to go back to dreams too much, but going back to the dreams that God gave Joseph that he shared with his brothers, those two were setups that started this thing in motion to move him from point A to point B. Stan? Okay.
Was it then God's idea or plan to have his brothers throw him in the pit?
How God's plan, I don't think is in the details. I think it's in the bigger picture. But yeah, it was God's plan for Joseph to get to Egypt. And just in the same way that God disciplines his people, often the people that he allows to be used to discipline his people take it too far, and then he has to go and deal with them. So did they take it too far? Is this how the whole setup was supposed to be? Was this how God wanted them to do it? All we know is God needed Joseph in Egypt at that time to save his family from starvation.
Okay, so God, the implication here is not that God is a puppet master,
Nope.
but he's a master at making lemonade out of lemons.
There you go.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, and to say it,
Mm-hmm.
to kind of say that yet another way, I guess you could say, yeah, it's that, because a lot of times when I look at this is, and even thinking about like Judah and Tamar, because even Judah says when everything's revealed is that Tamar is more righteous, which messes with our heads a little bit because she tricked him into sleeping with her.
Yeah.
And he's saying that she's more righteous than he is. But so it's this whole, it's like it's the tension of that God is sovereign and he has this plan and humans can't mess it up but are also involved in it. Like humans have to kind of make it happen but also can't make it, like can't mess it up in the sense of like God has decided, he's chosen this family, kind of going back to like a comment earlier of like he's chosen this family to ultimately bring salvation to the world, so he's not going to let them all die. Mm-hmm. And yet this didn't necessarily have to be the way this worked out. Like he could have gotten Joseph to Egypt and gotten him into this position and had him, there could have been this, like Joseph rising to this position to be able to save everyone through a different way. Mm-hmm. It didn't have to be through his brothers putting him in a pit, but because his brothers threw him in a pit doesn't mean the plan changes, if that makes sense.
What the enemy meant for evil.
Yeah. God works for good.
Faith?
Well, I would add to that too, kind of the same thing you're saying, but God always honors free will,
right.
Number one. And the whole plan is going to be checkmate against the enemy. Mm-hmm. Because eventually his blood is going to cover all those sins.
Yep.
And that's the whole point. So he's working through our messiness and our fall because of the serpent. Mm-hmm. He will redeem it all in the end.
And can I say one other parallel thing about this Joseph story to Yeshua? Because like think about, because it's so thinking about back to the dreams, the original dreams, right? Mm-hmm. That he's gonna, his brothers and his family is all gonna they're all gonna bow down to him. So he's gonna be, in this loose parallel savior position, essentially, right? Like, think about Yeshua. Like, Yeshua, that we have in the Gospels, that Yeshua tells the disciples everything that's going to happen and every, you know, like, what the whole plan is, and they don't understand, right? Until after he's resurrected, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, now we get it, right? Because even up until that point, because what happens when Yeshua dies? They run away. They're like, dang it, we're in trouble now. We got to get out of town or we're next. Like, you know, and then it doesn't make sense until, and so it's all this progressive revelation. And I think it's the kindness of the Lord too, to like reveal things as we can understand. But I see that parallel with the Joseph and the Yeshua is that they, you know, like essentially God, you know, they know, they ultimately, God gives them the end at the beginning, but they don't understand until they walk through the whole thing. And it does, but it allows for, right? It allows for this process for Judah to, I think Judah to understand righteousness. Is another way that I would say it. Like you were calling it maturity, which I think is a part of it, but I would also include righteousness. Which brings him to the point of being able to lay down his own life. And so there's all these, you know, like, and I always think about like God is not in as much of a hurry as we are. You know, he's not as worried about time as we are, because he's infinite. Like we're finite. So we feel time so much differently than he does. Huh?
He doesn't have a birthday coming up.
Exactly. So I think he allows then people to go through these processes and go down these paths that bring about right. And we see. I say, you know, like I see the story as progressively cyclical, because we come around and we see some of the same things happen, but the story is still moving forward and they are still learning. You know, like Joseph and Judah and even Jacob are not the same as Abraham. They have, but at the same time, they have some of the same pitfalls with favoritism and some of these things, but they're still, like, the story has still moved forward, if that makes sense. And the Lord reveals himself to every generation, which again, we'll continue to see as we move through this, like the wilderness and even through the rest of Israel's history. You know, he reveals himself to every generation. You know, the revelation of the generation before isn't enough for the current generation or the next. Like each one has to understand and encounter God for themselves.
Yeah. I think the secular thing too also basically continues to show the continuity on how the Lord deals with his people, which is how we can even pull that into the end times of, and we're not going to go there, but even like the rapture where we're not going to have to go through anything because, and if you look at the storyline, God always took his people through things. He didn't pull them out of it so they didn't have to go through things. They always went through things and he was with them. And we see that in secular stories when we can see the continuity of how God walks with his people from the very beginning all the way to the end. He doesn't change, and he walks with them.
Yeah, I agree with the time thing, because 2,000 years does seem like a long time, but of course Peter quotes the Psalm, 1,000 years like a day, like 1,000 years. But and also about the disciples, they still had the end game in mind in Acts 1. They still knew the ultimate objective was the restoration of Israel. And so they asked, Yeshua, are you going to now bring the kingdom? Are you now going to restore Israel, this physical kingdom? And he says, no one knows the time. I don't know if he says there, but at some point we know that he says, I don't even know, only the Father knows.
Yeah.
And so they didn't miss that. They knew that Yeshua throughout their 3 years with them never said there's not going to be a physical kingdom. Because they still had that goal in mind that there's going to be this restoration of Israel. But we just don't know the time.
Yeah, Bob?
So another perspective to me would be the two dreams were really prophecy, right? They were prophecy. The scripture says the Lord doesn't do anything except that which he reveals to the prophet. So to me that's a reminder that pay attention to what the prophetic words are throughout Scripture,
Mhm.
because it gives you a foreshadow of what God is going to do, so
Yeah.
that when it happens, you can say, yes, God, you did that. It's another part of the testimony of God
Mhm.
for us.
Yeah. And we do see like shifts on how God interacts or gives prophecy throughout this, where, whether it's the Lord physically showing up pre-incarnated in Yeshua to encounter Abraham, or giving it in a dream, or giving it in a vision, or giving it in the word. He's still speaking, but he's not always speaking the same way. And so, that was the thing. It's like there was a little shift. We don't really see, a man approaching Joseph and laying out what I'm going to do, like the man approached Abraham and laid out what he was going to do. We're starting to see this progressive change on how God talks to his people in multiple ways. So I like that. But I want to give, before we have to close up, now Joseph tells his brothers that he wants them to come live in the land of Goshen. So he tells them what to say, so that's where Pharaoh will put them. But Goshen being this prime real estate in Egypt. And here's my little nugget, because I love this. The spelling of Goshen in Hebrew, and Nassim, you can tell me if I'm wrong, is Gimel Shin Nun. Is that correct? The spelling of the garden, which the word gone, is Gimel and Nun. So we have one letter difference, but basically they're saying, I'm going to put you in a garden in Egypt. And we see that why they were in that garden, even as slaves, why they're in this garden, because it's always about getting back to the garden, they prosper, right? And when you're looking at what's happening, we see the Egyptians, like the famine hits bad, right? So fast forwarding kind of towards this end, well, I don't want to miss the fact that Pharaoh's happy for Joseph. He offers the best land. Joseph goes and gets dad. Jacob goes to Egypt. He has an encounter with God, telling him it's okay to leave the land. So Jacob has to have another wrestle, like, God, you said this is the land. Do I do this? And God's like, yep, it's good. You can leave. This is my setup. You're fine. So he has this encounter in Genesis 46. And then he sends Judah before him. So Judah goes first. And this is in verse 28 of 46. Correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah. So we get the whole 70 people are now heading to Egypt, and it says, now he sent Judah before him to Joseph to show him the way to Goshen. So right here, Judah goes first. It's that to the Jew first principle is kind of starting here. Judah goes first. And now we see that dad truly trusts Judah because he sends him first. And so we see that whole shift, that dynamic of that trust that comes in there. So Judah's first. Judah has a place of trust with both his dad and Joseph. And now in verse 29, Joseph's reunited with his dad. It's amazing. Chapter 47, we have Pharaoh blessing Jacob with the best of the land. And we have Jacob in turn speaking blessing over Pharaoh. So this takes us back to Genesis 12 of I'll bless those who bless you, I'll curse those who curse you, and all the families of the earth will be blessed. So we see this mutual blessing. This is the setup of how the Lord wanted it. The nations blessing Israel, Israel blessing the nations. It's like, how did this go so badly? Because this started up so well, in this relationship dynamic. And so, you know, all the families of the earth will be blessed. Then I also noticed it was interesting that the famine gets really bad, really, really bad. But Israel's hanging out in Goshen and they're doing okay. In the meantime, we have Egypt and the nations, first they have to sell their money, or first they have to give all their money, right? Then they have to sell their livestock to live. Then they have to sell their land to live. Then they sell themselves into servitude, slavery. So, and it says only the priests were excluded from this. But in the meantime, we still have Jacob and his family doing well in Goshen. And so that whole blessing of being placed where they're at, it doesn't say that, you know, Jacob had to sell all his cows. It's talking about the people that had to come, but it's talking about Jacob's family prospering in Goshen. And then verse 27, it ends, it says, meanwhile, Israel settled in the land of Egypt, in the land of Goshen, acquired property in it, and were fruitful and multiplied.
Great.
And the Lord told them all the way back in Genesis 1, be fruitful, multiply, and fill the land. They were doing what God told them to do, and his favor was on them. So, Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you.